You're listening to the Jam Price Show, all about movies. And today, my guest is award-winning director, producer, and cinematographer, Michael Premo. And we're going to be talking about his award-winning documentary entitled Homegrown. Welcome to the show, Michael.
Thank you for having me. It's so great to be here.
It's lovely having you here. I have so many questions about this film, but first, so our audience knows what we are talking about. Why don't you give a brief synopsis of what Homegrown is all about?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be in conversation with you.
Thank you.
Homegrown is a original documentary that premiered last year at the Venice Film Festival, and it follows a father to be in New Jersey, an Air Force veteran in New York City, and this charismatic activist from Texas crisscrossing the country in the summer of 2020 through the spring of 2025. And it is the only film that we know of that really looks at that period from an on the ground level as individuals became increasingly radicalized and went on to do what they did and were eventually pardoned.
It's just amazing. So you started filming this in 2020, correct?
We started filming this in 2018.
2018.
We started
So
our research maybe a year or two before that, but we really started filming in 2018.
so you did you have some kind of premonition about what was going to happen because it's kind of been crazy.
It almost seems that way.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what we did know is that we could see, following the sort of response to Barack Obama's presidency, we could see the temperature rising, so to speak. And one thing, I've covered social movements for a long time, and one thing that was particularly caught my eye was that increasingly there was all these different sort of flavors of conservative activists who were finding alignment and coming together in a way that I hadn't ever seen and wasn't familiar with ever actually happening, which I thought was a sign of just this sort of like momentum that was building in a way that was quite unprecedented. And so, given that, we set out to try to understand who was driving this, what was driving this, and we set out to cross the country really, and beginning in 2018, meeting people at bars, at rallies, at meetups, in public parks to get the temperature of people.
That's amazing because it wasn't so I think it wasn't so bad in 2018. I guess it wasn't really not like today. Today is wholly different
Yeah, that's right.
yeah, landscape, let's put it that way.
Yeah.
So, how did you choose the three people that you follow in this documentary? I mean, you had my research says you had quite a few people that you were following. Is that correct? And then you figured that it was better to narrow it down and just focus on three distinctly different protagonists. I guess that's what the word we might say, right? In this.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah,
how
absolutely.
did you choose those three and why?
Oh, it was hard, I'll tell you, Jen. It was really, really hard to make that decision around who we would follow. In the course of making this film, we met a lot of really interesting, engaging individuals who were doing really provocative things, and we followed about a dozen people over the course of filming started in 2018. And so it wasn't until we got into the edit in like 2021, 2022 that we had to make really hard choices around who would make it in the final film. And those decisions were dictated first by the constraint of having only 2 hours. Our brains can only hold so much in terms of character development, and really, we really wanted to offer a really kind of up close, personal, and intimate look at people over time. So that created a sort of framework in which we had to work on. From there, we knew that what we wanted to show was people who we felt were broadly representative of lots of different types of people that we had encountered. So, one of our protagonists, his name is Chris. Chris is an individual who self-identifies as never being really aware of or caring about politics in any particular way before 2015. And there was something about Trump riding down that golden elevator and sort of everything that ensued afterwards that excited and ignited something in him. And so we felt it was absolutely necessary that he was in the film because he was so broadly representative of these sort of newly engaged people. Another one of the protagonists is named Thad. He's from South Texas. At the time when we met him, he was living in Salt Lake City, and we met him at a rally in Portland, Oregon. So he was just sort of wandering around the country, sort of rallying people to his cause. And what was distinct about him, but also broadly representative of a type of person that we were encountering, was he was a person of color who was drawn to this movement. And, at that time, that was something that was not really broadly discussed or talked about in the mainstream media. Following the Trump's second election, the voter share from Latinos and African Americans has gotten a little bit of press, but at that point, no one was talking about that. And we're looking around at all these events, and I was looking around, and I kind of felt like I was at high school at sometimes, where I was sort of at the table with all the Black and Latino kids. Again, and I was like, "Whoa, why are you people here? What's bringing you here?" And so, and then the third person who's in the film, the third protagonist, Randy, he represents that sort of tireless, behind the scene organizer who just is the backbone of every social movement. And sometimes it's hard to show that type of work because it's a lot of time on the phones and computers that doesn't always lend itself to a cinematic portrayal. But it was really an important perspective to include. And so yeah, that's what led us to making those choices around those three protagonists.
Yeah, it's fascinating, having them. I- I- Yes, you're right. When the 2024 election took place, I think many of us were surprised how many Latino and Black voters voted for the person who occupies the White House now, currently. Having said that, and so much has changed in the last year since he took office almost a year ago. Uh, do you have a pulse on how much that may have changed since then, especially with everything that's going on right now with ICE all over the country, and last week with Renee Good being killed? Do you see a shift? I mean, are you watching that? Are you doing a follow-up documentary in any way on the aftermath?
We have been thinking about, what's our next project and how it can relate to this story for sure. I don't have any sort of empirical evidence around how things have shifted, but anecdotally, certainly the mood has shifted among people who were supporting him initially. Particularly, it's been fascinating to listen to some Latinos, some non-Latinos who are surprised by the level and aggressive approach that the federal government has taken, and that their surprise is surprising to me
Yeah.
because they're doing exactly what they said they would do.
Yes.
So I'm not, it's always fascinating to me, that disconnect where people sometimes kind of just hear what they want to hear or sort of pick and choose.
And didn't
Um,
believe. Didn't
yeah, they
believe
didn't
that he
believe.
would, or what everyone was told was it was going to be the worst of the worst, and gangs and things like that. But it's not that. Obviously, we all
Correct.
know that now. But anyhow, we
Yeah,
digress.
no, I think you hit the nail on the head there. That whereas it's like if they people just didn't necessarily think it was going to be as bad as it was, and even despite he was just saying what he was saying, and they thought I was going to be the member, not the gardener.
Yeah, I mean, I saw somebody just recently. I mean, within the last few days, I think his wife was taken,
Yeah,
and he was a supporter.
yeah.
So yeah, here we go. I mean, can you imagine? His wife's been here like whatever, a long, many, 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 many years, 30 or something, and they took her.
Hmm.
For no real reason. So that's the thing. I think there's more of an I would love to have you film the outrage now that's going on. And we're trying to do it. I shouldn't say that but the people who are out there now are truly trying to be as peaceful as possible
Hmm.
without incident. We don't want to incite anything at all. I mean, I'll be honest, I've been on many of the marches this year, and we're trying to do it, in a peaceful way. But I think what your film is talking about in many ways is if we started communicating with one another when we think we're on opposite sides of the aisle, if we start to communicate with one another, we discover that we're really not, that there are many things that we meet with in the middle. And I think that's what your documentary, really shines a light on in a way.
I really appreciate you saying that because, that's like one of the things that was at the forefront of our mind through the whole edit was really how do we cut through all of the noise and the preconceptions to just offer a look at everyday people making a series of decisions that you may or may not necessarily agree with, but like hopefully we're offering insight on what is driving people there, what is leading people there. And I think when we get, when we're just dealing with sort of the social media vitriol,
Hmm.
just the exasperated comments, we forget that at the end of the day, people are people, and like what's motivating them is not necessarily ideology or some big sort of mission. It's just they're looking for community, they're looking for purpose, they want to matter, they want to make sense of an uncertain world.
Yeah. And, bottom line, everybody wants the same thing. They want, to be able to have a good job where they can provide for themselves and their families, be able to afford food, go on a vacation, whoever, that comes,
Occasionally.
all of these simple things, right?
Yeah.
Afford health care,
Yeah, right.
all of
Crazy
these.
idea, right?
Yeah, totally, right? And so I think, bottom line, it's just a different approach to getting to the same place.
Yeah, that's right.
And
That's
if
right.
we can have conversations, that's why I love covering documentaries. It's a higher education for me. I say this all the time. I learned so much just covering documentaries alone. But if we can come to a meeting of the minds and realize that we're not talking about anything that's uniquely different for each of us, that we all basically want the same thing underneath it all. But how do we get there? What's our approach to it? All of that is completely different. So yeah, it's fascinating. Your documentary is fascinating, and you had a world premiere at the Venice Film Festival last year, or 2024,
Yeah.
and you've won all kinds. You won a Critics Week International Film Festival Critics Week award there, and Cologne you won an award. Washington, you've won all kinds of awards wherever this film is shown. What has the response been in the conversation after you screen the film at these film festivals?
The screenings at the film festivals all over the world, but especially in Europe, have been absolutely fascinating. I've never worked on a project where virtually the entire audience just stays after the screening, waiting to engage in conversation because they're just filled with so many questions. And so it's been a really sort of gratifying and in one way that that people are sort of receiving what we're trying to convey around having a deep and nuanced look at your neighbors or maybe the people in another country who you're wondering what are those people doing over there. Um, and so it's been really great. It's been really great. As a result, too, we've had broadcasts all over Europe and screenings in theaters and stuff like that. And people just can't get enough because what's happening in America, as we know, has a profound influence on the rest of the world, particularly around democratic societies. And there's other people in those democracies who are faced with the same challenges where they're just like finding themselves in this error of an us versus them politic. And they're like, look, like we're all hurting, we're all struggling. The pandemic did a number on us. We live in these societies that are greatly unequal, and we just want housing and healthcare. And there's these sort of anti-democratic forces trying to create these sort of like easy answers and these easy scapegoats. So, they're in a very similar situation as the US, and they're looking to us for clarity, for understanding, and also better learning how they're going to be impacted by, whatever crazy impulse comes their way.
Yeah, and you're right. There does seem all over Europe, which has also been surprising for us, a rise in what we'll just call the right wing,
Yeah.
of politics in their countries, many countries, and as it has been here too. So, yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, I think the world order is just really getting shaken up everywhere.
Yeah, that's right.
Everybody looks, you're right, to the United States, for guidance and where we're going. And I think they're surprised by what's happening in our. I think we're all surprised by what's going on in our country too. And maybe it's a good thing, but I'm always Pollyanna positive. I always try to look at the bright side of things. That maybe the shaking up of everything, you shake the tree and see what fruit, comes down to the ground.
Yeah.
So, maybe that's what we're going to be doing. We're shaking up everything to see what good things can come out of all of this,
I really appreciate your positivity because I think there's something there. There's some people who argue that, these are just like the sort of tremors of a shifting era as a new kind of age, a new era is being born, and technology and all these things are reshaping our realities and our understanding of who we are and how we organize society. So, I feel that in my bones that we're sort of at the precipice of something. It
Yes.
might get a little dark before we get there, but like there is light there. Like we're at the cusp of a new era for
Yeah.
sure.
I agree. I agree. And before the light, there's always the dark,
Hmm.
before the dawn, in the
Yeah,
dawn of the day.
darkest.
And
Yeah.
if you are a student of history at all, at all, in any way, shape, or form, you see what yes, what we're going through is very different for us, but it's not different. You can definitely look at World War II. We have to look at that. That's a really good, place for us to be looking. And that's only 80 years ago, over a little over 80 years ago. So we need to continue to look at history to see how things can change and become better and after a period of time where everything's in upheaval. So yeah. So
Yeah.
you've
No,
been
I think that's absolutely right.
sorry, I'm sorry.
No, no, go ahead.
Now, as I say, you've been following uprisings for a long, long time. So this was kind of a natural one for you to do. Okay, I do want to talk about because you were at the Capitol, filming at the Capitol.
Hmm.
So let's talk because you and your producer, Rachel, is it Rachel,
Hmm.
got into a very, very scary situation. And you had no idea what was going to happen when you went to the Capitol on January 6th, 2021. So let's talk a little bit about that and your experience of it and the footage you were able to get.
Yeah, so it was a wild day. It was because of the pandemic. It was a very light crew. It was just basically me filming, and my producing partner just was doing sound. And we knew because of what we had, because of how the movement was building in the fall of 2020. We knew that something was gonna pop off. And when Trump sent that tweet that's famously called Will Be Wild, where he talks about January 6th being the certification and the last chance for him to sort of like hold on to this idea that he hadn't lost the election. Um, when as soon as that tweet went out, we just saw sort of social media and cable news and the other sort of new web-based news outlets just explode with excitement. And the refrain that was echoed over and over and over again was, "We got to storm the Capitol. We have to take this into our own hands." So we knew that that was the plan, but never in my wildest imagination did I expect to get to the Capitol on the morning of January 6th and not see law enforcement making like the appropriate preparations. It was absolutely sort of like, yeah, there was this moment in my head of just like dissonance where, I've been looking at these groups and following these social media and watching news and knowing that many of these groups that are on social media are called sort of Blue Lives Matter groups or police support groups. And I know that law enforcement is in these groups. And yet, when we got there, the Capitol Police and Parks the Police and DC Police, there was no sort of visible security or riot or police response on the level of what I've seen at many, many other protests in DC that I've been at. And
Interesting. Why do you think that is?
so I can't necessarily speculate on their motivation,
Mhm.
but somebody at some point made a decision that what was happening didn't warrant like the level of cordoning off that happens around the Capitol building when there's protests in DC. Fascinating, right? Like I
Mm-hmm.
think that's just something
Mm-hmm.
that demands to be sort of scrutinized more than it has
Yes.
been so far.
Yes.
And we were traveling around to all the protests we went with bulletproof vests and helmet and bulletproof helmets and gas masks, but we didn't have them on. I did. We had our bulletproof vests on. We didn't have our gas masks and helmets on again because I just didn't think. I thought that there would be those sort of metal gates that the Parks Department puts up, that the Parks Police puts up, that would just prevent us from getting anywhere close to the Capitol. But none of that was up. And as our protagonist in our film, Chris, and his other fellow comrades in arms, as I sort of approached the Capitol, there was this cop, this female cop police officer who was just in regular everyday police clothes, not prepared for a riot, just everyday patrol uniform. I saw her sort of be punched in the throat, and I saw her kind of sort of retreat back up the walk with another officer, and I was just like turned to my producing partner. I was just like, "We put on your gas mask. This is going to be crazy." And
You came pre go ahead.
yeah,
Yeah, go ahead. But you
yeah,
came
no, no.
prepared.
Yeah, we came prepared. We were prepared. We were prepared. Um, and one of the sort of advantages and disadvantages is in a gas mask, it's hard to breathe. It's and the a bulletproof vest, it's covering your vital of your chest and your stomach. But if anything's pressing against it, it compresses your whole chest. And we were stuck in the tunnel, which is the on the west side of the Capitol. And there's this sort of long tunnel where some of the kind of most fierce hand-to-hand combat of that day transpired, and we were pinned against the wall. And
Ah,
because of I had the bulletproof vest on, because it was just sort of completely compressing my chest and compounded by the gas mask, I thought I was going to pass out because I couldn't breathe.
my goodness.
And it wasn't. There was somebody who I made eye contact with, somebody in the crowd who was a militia member or part of a group who I had seen somewhere at other rallies. We kind of recognized each other, and he saw that I was in distress, and he sort of helped me out of the jam, quite literally.
Oh, you were
Uh,
lucky.
yeah, and that was by far the scariest moment that day.
I can imagine. I can imagine. Wow, Michael, it's just amazing that you were able to do all of that. It truly is. What do you want people to get out of this documentary?
I really appreciate this question. I really thank you for asking me that. I hope that people can enter this doc, which admittedly is hard for some people to watch.
Hmm. It is.
Um, and I hope that they can take away an understanding of what is motivating people, what's driving people. And then it's not the ideology, it's people looking for community, people looking for friends. And, they just happen to have somebody who's giving them easy answers. And they're taking those answers. But, I think we can engage in we haven't lost I haven't lost all hope that we can continue to engage in conversation around how to sort of meaningfully address these fundamental problems that I think people across the spectrum shares, that we live in a fragile and uncertain world. And what are we going to do to make it a livable place for everybody?
Yeah. Well, let's hope there's somebody or somebodies out there that could be a healing, bring healing, like a Martin Luther King, which we're going to be celebrating his birthday this weekend coming up. When I record the shows early, so when people hear this, it's like, oh, it's a long time ago. Uh, anyhow, that that's what we need, and we need people like that. Barack is out there talking and trying and doing what he can do in his role, but we need other people, more people, let's put it that way, to try to see how we can bring people together to heal. And this film does do that. So thank you for making it, Michael. Really, I appreciate you. It's a lot of work and a lot of years of your life that putting into this documentary. Where can people see Homegrown?
Homegrown is available for a limited time at homegrown.film. And folks can go there and rent it at home and watch it on your device or your smart TV until February 16th. So we're doing this special premium on demand window between January 6th and President's Day. And people can come to homegrown.film to stream the film today.
Okay, send me have either have you or Emma or somebody send me that link, and we'll put it in our social media posting when we put it out there so
Yeah,
people
will
can
do.
watch
Yeah,
it.
will do.
All right. Thank you, Michael. It was a pleasure having you on the show, really,
Yeah,
truly. So
thank you
thank
so
you.
much for having me. Thank you for the
Thank
work that you
you.
do, and yeah, wish you a happy New Year.
Yes, Happy New Year too. And thank you for the work you do. And stay safe.
Yeah, thank
Okay.
you.
All right. Take care. Bye bye.